Jamal Murray's back again. We've done this like 4 times. He says he's not back, and he's always been back, and that's nothing's different. We'll talk about Murray's perception on his game and his recalcitrance towards that idea. We'll talk about Peyton Watson and how he's progressing. Is he going to be a part of the Nuggets' future or not? Plus, why January is go time for the Denver Nuggets. Well, all that and more here on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day, being with us Monday through Friday. We do appreciate you guys joining us for this. No jinx on a Monday. Ryan Blackburn often tweets that the Nuggets are in trouble and there's no way they can win it. I often tweet that the Nuggets are cooked, and then they go on to win in both instances. So we call the show No Jinx. I'm from the Action Network. You can find my Substacks at both Hardwood Paroxysm and thedenverdig.com, where tomorrow I'll have a piece about lineups for Denver and what's kind of shaking out with some of their lineups, because I'm apparently just going to crib Ryan's bit because he's the lineup guy.
It's a good bit.
Ryan Blackburn is at Mile High Sports. You can catch him there, as well as on the Pickaxe and Roll podcast. If you like Ryan's thoughts here, if you like the way that Ryan looks at these things and you want more of his thoughts, go check out the Pickaxe and Roll podcast. Go subscribe to it and hit the like buttons over on YouTube and subscribe. Help us and do that for us, because we're almost, I think, to 8,500. We're going to do it. We're going to hit 10K, but we can't do it without you. So spread the word, send the show, hit the likes, give us the comments. Tell us what you think in the comments on Locked On Nuggets. All right, on today's show, we're going to talk about January and why it's so important as the Nuggets start 2025 for them to hit the gas, and what we're going to find out about them as far as their playoff futures are concerned. We're going to talk about Peyton Watson and his progress this season, but we start with Jamal Murray, who in Saturday's win over the Detroit Pistons, Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, and Michael Porter Jr. combined for many, many points, many assists, and many rebounds. It was a phenomenal performance from the big three, as they are apparent. I think you can call them that with Aaron Gordon out. It was a really great game for the Nuggets. There was a moment where I thought the Pistons were going to get back into the game and make it a game, and Malone was really pissed after the game that the starter or the bench screwed around and let them get back into it, so they had to put starters in. But the Nuggets did keep them at bay, didn't get into a fight with how physical they were, and got a comfortable win in this one, 134-121. In that game, Jamal Murray goes for 34 points on 12 of 21, 4 of 7, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists. After I argued with Swipa on Friday about being like, he had 5 great games and then 1 bad game, and we're back to Jamal's cooked. I was like, can we wait? Just a little bit? And then he had a great game. Jamal has been obstinate about this entire thing, where it's like he mentions casually that he's got plantar fasciitis, and he mentions all these random injuries, and he is clearly banged up, but doesn't want to say it. It's almost like guys will be like, I'm fine. If I'm out there and I'm playing, you can judge me, I'm fine. But it's almost like Jamal's resentful of that dynamic. He assents to the idea that if he plays, you can judge him, but also no one should ever judge him because he's a champion. It's very hard to get through his attitude. But look, Jamal's been phenomenal in the month of December. He's been terrific. And this is, if you wanted to see this, and you've seen it. So the guy's got to get credit for how he's played lately.
He, of course, does. The interesting dynamic is that so much of what Nuggets fans and what NBA fans have really come to expect from Jamal, based off of the reputation that he's cultivated in the playoffs, is all right, now it's go time. It's go time. You see how hard Jokic is working. You see how much burden the rest of the team has to carry when he is not at his best. And I think it's fair to question, hey, you start slow. You start slow on a consistent basis. This is something that he himself said. It was one of the narratives that was brought up and that he brought up. He's like, oh, I guess everybody should be mad at me all the time, right? Because I start slow every year. And it's true. It's true. And the question to me is that okay? Is it okay to just kind of shrug that off as, yeah, this is just what I do? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. And one of the reasons why I certainly wanted to talk about this was how much do the first 20, 25 games of the season really affect Denver's championship hopes? And I think he may have an argument on that one that he doesn't have to be at his best at that point as long as he gets to the good point later in the season. I don't know if that's the right way to think about it. I think that you should be there from day one and you should be doing everything that you can. And he, to his credit, he did say he was doing everything that he could. He just wasn't making shots. And maybe there's something to that. Maybe there's not. But I think that there is just a gap between where he thinks he is / going to be versus where everybody else expects based off of what happened in the playoffs last year.
Swipa's got the flu, by the way. So shout out to Swipa. Feel better, buddy.
Play with Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen will carry you.
Yeah. I'm sorry, buddy. I don't know. Maybe watch the end of the Broncos-Bengals game. That'll make you feel better. Don't tell Santa Cruz, who has been very harsh on Jamal in our comments. Let's see. I'm tracking this every day for the last 4 months. Says, I do think us fans are sometimes too harsh on Jamal, to be honest, and don't appreciate him when he actually does show up. I think
bro is wearing the hot dog suit on that one. Oh my God.
Yeah. I think as far as the slow starts thing, would you rather have Jamal start? Like, this has been always the thing with him, which is, would you rather Jamal start fast and not be a killer in the playoffs? Because there's lots of guys like that. There's lots of guys that absolutely take the league by storm in the first 3 months of the season and dominate, honestly, from beginning to end. And then when the lights get brightest and it's winning time, they aren't able to get it done. And I'm somebody that has tried to accurately portray James Harden's career, the good, the bad, and the ugly throughout its entirety. And James is definitely that player. James has put up numbers in the playoffs, but he has not been good enough. And that's just like, that's the story of his career for me as the main number one guy. Yeah. Jamal, on the other hand, I walked into the arena last year before game 1 of the Lakers. I sat down next to Ryan and I said, we assume that this is going to work because Jamal is going to be who Jamal is. What if he's not?
Yeah.
And it was not like I'm doubting Jamal, right? If Jamal heard that, he'd be like, why would you think, like, what do I have? He's very like, he goes into these pressers and he's just offended at the idea that any of us would not just be like, Jamal Murray is awesome. And all of you that think anything that there is wrong or that he does anything wrong is an idiot. And I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, you scored less than 15 points for like a long stretch of time.
Yeah. He wants people to bow at the altar. He wants to go to war with people. That's what he really wants. And look, that's what gets him going, man. That's what helps. Like he said, he would use it as motivation. All right, let's see it. Let's see him go off for a long stretch of games.
Because like, all we're able to do is kind of talk about what happens. And I've done both on this show where I've said, like, if you want to really get into it, Jamal Murray has had 15 incredible, insane games. He has had 15 of the best playoff games I have seen any player have. If you asked me to go through and I just picked out the 15 best playoff games of every player I've watched in 17 years of covering the league, Jamal Murray is probably going to have like a top 5 to 10 list. That's how great he's been in his best 15 games of his playoff career. And that's absolutely what he deserves to be. But you have to do it every single time if you don't do it in the regular season. That's the difference. That's why we're here, is you have to do it every single time in the playoffs if you're going to do this. Hurricane says Jamal was good last year, though, 21-4-6. And like, I made this argument last year that I was like, look, Jamal made real progress as a playmaker. But everyone's expecting an all-star caliber 25-7 year from Jamal because of what they see in the playoffs. And it just made, like, at this point, we have to say it. That's just not who he is. He is not that guy from October through April. He's that he'll be that, like, he was that guy versus the Pistons.
Yeah.
34-5-4. But he's not that guy every night for 6 months.
And the other thing, of course, is the contract. The contract is so tied into how most fans view players. And that's like, you were talking about Tobias Harris the other night and how he has filled a good role for the Detroit Pistons with a lesser burden than the $35-40 million contract that he signed with the with the Sixers for 5 years. That was his cross to bear because of the money that the general manager gave Tobias Harris, not because of anything else, not because it wasn't Tobias Harris's fault that he accepted the money. And I think the same can be said with Jamal here. It wasn't Jamal's fault that he was offered that big of a contract. He signed it. It is now up to his, like, he still has to step up and prove it. And the Nuggets are making that bet on him, but it's a tough bet, obviously, to make when you're being paid like a top 15 player or so.
Jamal also says that he's like, I'll pay attention to any of it.
Okay.
I will just tell you that, like, we have pretty strong reasons to believe that, like, that's just not the case, and that's okay, right? And I don't mind him saying that. I do think the interaction between him and Vinny Benedetto, that was a reporter, by the way, Vinny Benedetto from the Colorado Gazette, who does a great job and is less takey than Ryan and I.
Oh, yeah.
Vinny just does a really good job writing about the Nuggets.
Yes.
But, like, Jamal was like, about what? And he was like, well, about the contract. And because that's the whole thing. The biggest thing I wish that I could express to NBA players is that they think that we're out to make a name for ourselves and to pump up ourselves and get clicks and make us rich. And that's not really how this works. I promise you, it's not how it works. We just try and do the best job that we can. But one of those jobs is we try and be the conduit between the fans, like the folks joining us at youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets plug, and the players. Like, that's part of the job, is to ask the questions that the fans want to know. The players aren't going to, like, they could talk about on their Instagrams all these types of things about their lives, and you can get to know them better, and that's all great. But there are things that you want to know. And one of the things that people want to know is, why have you been playing so badly despite after signing this contract? Now, like, I personally am just kind of like, because guys go through bad stretches of time. Like, he's been hurt, and that's pretty evident, and has been banged up. And I wish he could just admit, like, yeah, I've not been healthy and I'm going through a bad slump and I'll come out of it. That was like all he had to say, instead of denying, instead of like trying to what's the word when you make someone think that they're crazy?
Is it gaslighting?
Gaslighting.
Yeah.
Jamal gaslights me every presser.
Every single time.
Every time. He's just like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And I'm like, we could just talk about this thing. It's okay. Like, I don't, but regardless of all that, because, like, we'll talk about the stuff that goes on in the media interactions with Jamal, because, like, that's a look at what it's like covering these guys. But what matters is what Jamal does on the court, and Jamal's playing better, and that's made the Nuggets better, and he helped them win that game versus the Pistons on Saturday. We'll see how he follows that.
Yeah, he gives them the championship hopes. That's the title of this show. If he is at that level, the Nuggets can win a championship. Everything else can fall into place. If he continues to bring that, and it doesn't just have to be like 34-5 the entire time. It can just be 25-7. But if he's that on a consistent basis, the Nuggets always have a chance. They always will.
All right, up next, we're going to talk about Peyton Watson, because I want to talk a little bit about where P. Watt's at and his progression or lack thereof, and about what the kind of future is for Peyton Watson. We'll talk about that up next here on Locked On Nuggets. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket RX. If you're ready to boost your confidence and take control in the bedroom, Rocket RX has the solution. Imagine feeling more prepared and performing at your best. Rocket RX makes it simple and stress-free. Rocket RX offers FDA-approved treatments for erectile dysfunction at a lower cost than branded alternatives. No more uncomfortable doctor visits or pharmacy trips. Everything is delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging. With Rocket RX, you'll get trusted care from a real U.S. clinical team. Complete a quick 100% online consultation, and you can get your free prescription today. Visit rocketrx.com to get started now. It only takes 2 minutes. Right now, our listeners can get 40% off your first order when you use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's rocketrx.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions apply. Rocket RX, better sex made simple. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. Ryan Blackburn, Matt Moore.
I want to bring up this one real quick. Just continuing on the last segment. Jamal needs to show up against Minnesota, Boston, or Oklahoma. Like, that is literally the narrative of who he is. He's a big game merchant. Isn't that like what we were talking about last year? That's just what he does, man. And you can criticize him for not showing up in some of these regular season games, but last year he put up 35 against Boston on the road and just making clutch plays. He's been doing that his entire career. He's actually just literally made a narrative for himself about it. So I don't think that that's the criticism at all.
Yeah, the big thing I think is just like Jamal genuinely kind of thinks that it shouldn't matter how he does on a Tuesday versus, I mean, like a disappointing, what's like a disappointing Blazers, right? Like he doesn't think that should matter.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't think that like how he plays on a random Wednesday night versus Charlotte. Right? Or even like the middle tier teams like Orlando or whoever, right? Like he doesn't think, poor Charlotte. He doesn't think that those really should matter. He thinks that he should really be judged on his best.
I feel so bad for Charlotte, man. That's like they are the stereotypical team for that now. That's
and the NBA is definitely, it's about consistency, which is why Peyton Watson's development is kind of an important point, because consistency has been a little problem. So I looked at some of the numbers for Peyton.
Okay.
And what we're really kind of seeing with him, and like predictably, like he's great with the starters, looks awesome, maximizes all that kind of stuff. With where he's at right now, he's almost right where he was last December. When you look at EPM and impact numbers, like he's almost exactly where he was last year. I'm sure that he's not thrilled about Russ getting the start over him with Aaron Gordon, but at the same time, it's like, it makes a little bit more sense to me to do that. And a matter of fact, it's kind of like, I'm actually of the opinion what you're doing there is you're limiting the harm that comes in the Russ non-Jokic minutes. Is if Russ starts with Jokic, there's fewer minutes with Russ and not Jokic, and those have been bad minutes. Like Jokic and anyone and not Jokic is pretty bad, except for Jamal mysteriously this year. But like that's like a kind of a rotation thing. I think one of the things that's been weird for me about Peyton is that I've been kind of trying to understand. He looked like he was evolving into a 3-level scorer last year in the middle of the season. It's one of the reasons why I will continue to just be absolutely baffled at how the team got to All-Star and was just like, okay, cool, you're done. Christian's back in the starting lineup or back in the rotation and you're out and that's it. I just don't understand. I'm never going to understand that, because it was like Christian had earned his place in the rotation based off of how he played in the finals. He got that opportunity the next year. He was hurt in preseason. He struggled for most of the year. Peyton played awesome. And none of it mattered. It was just like, they just reverted right back to finals, right? And I'm not saying that I said this. I didn't think that the Wolves series was a series for Peyton Watson, and I still kind of don't. I think maybe he would have done a little bit better job on Ant, right? Yeah. But in general, I thought it was a Justin Holiday series. I thought they needed what Justin Holiday was going to bring to the table offensively. And that kind of bore out with how good Justin was. So I'm not necessarily like mad that he didn't play then, but it was just like the move of Peyton being removed from it. The bigger thing, though, is just like Peyton this season, it feels like he's only filling in gaps. And a lot of the commentary from coaches and players about various guys being interested in their situation and their minutes and their shots, we don't know who that's about. That could be about Julian Strother. That could be about Jamal Murray. That could be about Michael Porter Jr. That could be about anybody. But to me, like, it does kind of feel like there's a frustration a little bit with Peyton Watson in terms of that, which I don't blame Peyton, because I look at Peyton and I'm like, Peyton Watson's not Christian Braun. Christian has a higher likelihood of playing 12 years in the league and making more money over that time. But Peyton Watson has a 4 times better chance of being an all-star than Christian Braun.
And that's the thing, right? That's the thing about him. I think that the Nuggets should be taking as many swings for high ceiling players as possible. I think that they should be trying, like, especially when you lose the talent that you do with KCP and Bruce Brown, you have to find ways to replace them as starters, not just as bench guys, not just elevating your bench guys into starters and then hoping that you can fill in the gaps behind that. That's not how it works. Like, I do think that Christian, and we talked about it, I think that Christian can, like, he's going through kind of a rough patch right now. Obviously, he'll get through it. Guys are allowed to have bad months. There's no doubt about it. But with Peyton, this is a perfect opportunity for him to be getting 25 plus minutes a night on a consistent basis without Aaron Gordon. This is the time. And I am kind of surprised that they've gone with Russell Westbrook in that starting lineup. It makes sense for winning purposes, of course. And Michael Malone is doing what he thinks is the best chance for the Nuggets to win games now. And part of the reason why the early season matters, Matt, is because they can't get behind the 8 ball in the standings. And so it's all connected. Like Jamal plays better earlier, and then Peyton Watson gets more opportunities in January and February. Like, I really do think that all of this is connected together in a pretty interesting way. I hope that Peyton continues to have his head on straight with this. I hope he continues to be a good soldier. You and I talked about this before. Like, Christian is only ever going to do what the team wants him to do. But what you want Peyton Watson, with the talent that he has as a possible 3-level scorer, is to be able to color outside the lines a little bit, do those developmental things, and then potentially become a player that you can add to the starting lineup when Aaron Gordon ages out or Michael Porter gets moved. And those are things that the Nuggets always have to think about. So I'm very curious to see whether they can continue to do that, because when he's coloring outside the lines right now with some of the stuff that he's doing, he looks very uncomfortable.
Hurricanes of Kent Watson just play better and force the issue. Yes and no, because the advancement, he's doing all the other stuff. Like, he does make defensive plays. He is like one of the, he's their probably, I would say, third best defender. It's probably AG/Christian, and then Christian/AG, and then probably Peyton Watson, and then I would probably say Russ. Russ is maybe above him. I wouldn't like stomp my feet if you wanted to put Russ above him.
I think you might put Peyton Watson above Christian too. I think that might be different.
Christian's been in a little bit of a defensive slump, but I also think it's like he's playing a lot. he's playing a lot of minutes.
Sure.
So here's a good example of it, because to be fair, Peyton is playing 24 minutes compared to 18.6 last year. So his minutes are up.
Yeah.
Right. Scoring is up. His production is, his rebounds are flat, which is not great with more minutes, but his efficiency is also up with, he's shooting 36% from 3, 35.5. Like, that's good. That's good for where he's at and his arc. That's very promising. The problem is that per 36 minutes on better efficiency, he's scoring 0.1 points more because he's taking almost a full shot less.
Yeah, usage rate is trending down. Opportunity is trending down. Part of that is Russell Westbrook gets the ball. Jamal Murray gets the ball when he is staggering with the second unit. Denver has more ball-dominant guys than they had last year. For all the warts that Reggie Jackson had, he wasn't dominating the ball all the time. He would allow guys like Peyton Watson and others to initiate the offense at times, and the Nuggets really worked on that. I wonder if Denver should try to incorporate some of that in January if they can, because that might shift some things. But again, we're going to talk in the third segment. January is when you start to win, so you can't really be messing around.
Yeah, and I mean, they're not going to, because if they were going to do that, they would have done it with Michael Porter Jr. at any point over the last 3 years, and they're not going to do that. All right, let's on the other side. Ryan thinks that it's time for the Nuggets to put this together and put the hammer down. I'm not so sure. We'll talk about it on the other side here on Locked On Nuggets.
Oh, all right.
It's supposed to be a silent break, man. All right, back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. Matt Moore and Ryan Blackburn back here on No Jinx with you on a Monday. Appreciate you guys being with us. All right, so give me your speech on do you think January is go time for the Nuggets? The Denver Nuggets, as we close out the month of December and turn towards 2025, they'll play the Utah Jazz on Monday. The Nuggets are currently 17-13 in 7th place in the Western Conference. They are tied with the Clippers and Lakers in the loss column. They are 1 behind the Dallas Mavericks and 2 behind the 2-seed Memphis Grizzlies. God, the West is tough. Tell me why you think January is go time.
Yeah, so I look at the standings, and I don't just look at where Denver is right now. I look at the number of games they've played. They've played 30 games. They haven't played a lot, and they're kind of lucky that they haven't played a lot because they haven't played well. And that's where you kind of get saved a little bit by the schedule. And now, oh, by the way, the team that has played the fewest amount of games in the entire NBA, Philadelphia 76ers, which when you're without Joel Embiid that entire time, you're without Paul George for some of that time, you get a little bit saved. And when you're in the Eastern Conference, you get to jump up to 11th in the East because nobody else ahead of you is going to really put up much of a fight. Now for Denver, 16, I think they've got 16 games in January, if I'm not mistaken. This is where, and Jamal Murray said this post-game as well, this is where they really start to get going. Late December, January, February. You play well during this stretch, and you give yourself a whole bunch of wiggle room when it comes to March and April. You bank a bunch of wins here. This is where you start proving what you can do. This is where you start really locking into that flow. Denver's going to be playing a lot of games over a very short amount of time. If you can get into a good flow state here with this, and it's starting to come a little bit easier for you, be a little bit better on a little bit more of a consistent basis, I genuinely think the Nuggets can move up the standings here. Not that it really matters at this stage, but 13 losses in the 7th seed. Memphis has 11 losses in the 2nd seed. Why can't Denver be closer to the 2 seed, to the 2nd seed in the Western Conference by the end of January? I think that there's a very strong possibility of that.
All right. I think you are assuming that they can play better.
That is my assumption, yes.
Yeah. And so you think it's like a focus or an effort thing?
I think that the defensive side of things is certainly an effort thing and a focus thing. I think they have definitely messed around on that end a little bit too much.
So I would ask if you can provide some examples of the types of things that you're talking about that if they try harder, they would improve on defensively.
I think that the best example is Jokic. I think the best example is him being able to play active defense at the level, making those passes harder, doing those things on a more consistent basis that make the rotations easier on the back end. And then the Nuggets just being a little bit more locked in on when they have to do that on a consistent basis.
Is it fair to ask that from Nikola Jokic, who leads the NBA in touches?
Yes, it is.
Why?
Because he's the most valuable player. Because he's the guy who gets all these trophies, who gets all these accolades, who gets all the money, who does all of these things. And I think that there are times where he can, of course, shut it down. I think there are times where the team doesn't have to try hard all the time. But if you remember, it was very similar in the 2022-23 season, where they really locked in during the months of December, January, and February. Team was, I think, both a top 5 offense and top 5 defense during that stretch. And they were able to bank enough wins that they could shut it down mostly in March and April. I'm not saying that Denver has to be at the top of the Western Conference in order to do that. Obviously, they're not going to be because OKC's running away with this thing. But I don't think that it's with DeAndre Jordan and the Nuggets bench sort of figuring some stuff out over the course of these last few weeks, I don't think that Jokic is going to have to play 37 minutes a night if they are more locked in. I think he can play 33. I really do.
Random says, wait, Matt, didn't you just say 2 years ago that Jokic needs to stop being visibly upset and the roster is good enough? Keep it consistent, big guy. So one, I'm asking Ryan so that I don't have to take the flack for trying to put standards on Jokic, which no one wants to do. I do think that the argument of he's averaging 31, 13, and 10. I don't agree with that argument because it's not how I view basketball, but I get it. I get the idea. And Jokic is not alone in that. Guys that take on this amount of offensive responsibility do not have enough in the tank to do the stuff defensively, especially at the level, because it's really hard. You have to be more active. You got to be quicker. It's more it's just way tougher and exhausting to play at the level than it is to walk back 2 feet and put your hands up. And there are players in the league that are elite defensively because they do that. They are just tall and they back up 3 feet and they put their hands up.
It's fair.
My thing would be the best way to do this is to have Jokic in. I would agree with you that if you want to improve the defense, Jokic takes a step back offensively while Murray improves. And you lessen the offense a little bit in order to balance things out. Jokic plays harder on defense, fewer touches to balance that out. My problem is that I genuinely do not believe in the backside rotations to be able to cover in that scheme. I don't think they have enough. I'll say this. I don't think they have smart enough defenders on the back line and in rotation. I think Christian Brown in 3 years will be there. I think Peyton Watson in 3 years will be there. I think Julian Watson in 10 years will be there.
Julian Watson. Gotta love it.
But I don't think that they have it now. And I will just continue to say, like, from this perspective of January, I am going to maintain this is going to be a all year process. Like, the Nuggets probably have to make a trade if they can, and then get everybody integrated and get everybody healthy and sneak into a top 6 seed, and get the right series of matchups in order for them to have this window. And if that sounds like, Matt, that doesn't sound very likely. It's not. They're not very likely to win the title this year. I'm just not willing to be like, they're not going to do it. But I don't see, Ryan, them doing what you, I think they're capable of and want them to do, which is to exert those championship habits and look like a championship team for the first time since before the Spurs game.
Yeah.
I would go back further, like, because to me, the wheels came off when they started focusing on that win streak post All-Star. I forget who, I have to look it up. They beat one team and it was like an amazing victory. And I was like, all right, now you can ramp down. And instead they were like, and we're just going to keep on winning. And I was like, no, you did the thing. You got to go back now. Because that's what they did in 2023. They beat Memphis, and then we all were like, Jesus, what happened to them? Because all of March, they sucked because they beat Memphis, and then they ramped down. I don't think this team is going to have that luxury, and I don't think that they're going to be able to go on the type of run in January. They're not consistent enough. They don't have the ability to play possession to possession, quarter to quarter, game to game consistent enough for them to do that. I think this is going to be a scrap to game 82.
So is it a possibility that for Jokic specifically, for Murray specifically, that it really should just be like a slight incline in effort and urgency for the entire year? It doesn't have to be, hey, January needs to be a great month, or pre-All-Star break needs to be great, and then we can throttle down after that.
I really think it's more about, like, they've got to find, I'll say this. We've talked about the floor, right?
Yeah.
They got to find the floor, and they got to make sure that the floor is high enough. They need to, how can I put this? They're trying to get to the other side of the ocean, and they took on water in the beginning, and they got to make sure that they're able to shore up the holes in the hull so that they can make it to the other side. You can carry the water to the other side. It'll be slower and more of a grind, and you're going to run low on supplies, and Jimmy's going to get scurvy, but, like, you make it to the other side, and you've delivered the cargo. That's game 82. And then you figure out how you can get yourselves from the shoreline to the top of the temple. Like, that's the goal here.
Final question I have for you. Aaron Gordon has played 17 games. He's averaging under 29 minutes per game because of the minutes effect that missing that game early on had. He would be one of those smart defenders that you'd be talking about, right? The smart backline defenders that can do those things that you were speaking of. If he were to come back and be integrated into the rotation and on a consistent basis, do you think that they can still find ways to defend at the level that I'm talking about?
No, I don't think the wings are good enough. I don't think the guards are good enough. I just don't.
Okay.
I just don't think they got it. And I think teams. I'll say this too. Teams have figured out Denver. Not enough to beat them. They're still over 500. But, like, they know how to attack Denver. They know who to attack and how to attack them.
Yeah.
And they know what to guard with Denver. Like, they are scouted. And they need something to change that up, and that's not an in-season product.
Yeah, it definitely feels that is a fundamental off-season shift, and it's built around fundamentally different personnel that they don't have. So it's one of the reasons why we've been talking about trades. It's one of the reasons why we're talking about changing things up and whether the shift is supposed to happen, what's supposed to happen. Is Michael Porter have to be a fall guy? Things like that. And it's unfortunate that we got to go through that because they're 17-13.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate it.
They're 17-13. They've won 6 of their last 10.
Yeah.
You know, and honestly, for me, a lot of this is like, don't fall out. It's just like, tread water. That's where you got to be right now. All right. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us here on a Monday. Give us a 5-star review if you're joining us on a podcast. Go to youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets. Hit the like and subscribe button. Catch Ryan on Pickaxe and Roll. Hope Swipe is feeling better. Ryan's car. Did you get any battery today?
No, it's working perfectly. I took it out today and it was just fine. It just died. I don't know what happened. It just died and now it's fine.
Go get your battery tested, my man. I don't want you having a battery problem in the middle of I-25.
Everything's fine.
I'm not. If you're in the hospital, you're still doing the show. I want to make this very clear. Get your car fixed. All right. Have yourselves a great day. We'll see you guys again next time here on Locked On Nuggets.